We all know the story of Noah's Ark, right? It's iconic. A giant boat, animals 2 by 2, and a world-changing flood. But if you look really closely at the original text in Genesis chapter 7, you'll find some incredibly powerful ideas hiding in plain sight. So today, we're going to unpack 3 of these discoveries that reveal a much deeper meaning behind this familiar story.
First, we're going to set the stage and get a sense of just how massive the flood really was. Then, we'll dive into our 3 key discoveries, what the ark tells us about family, the impossible peace that existed inside of it, and the profound meaning behind the moment the door was shut. Let's get started. So, before we get into the really deep stuff, let's just get a handle on the sheer scale of this event. This wasn't just some rainstorm. This was a world-altering cataclysm. And the numbers in the text really put it into perspective.
First up, Noah's age. The guy was 600 years old when the floodwaters came. That's a whole lifetime of faith and obedience, building a boat for a storm no one had ever even seen before.
Imagine this. For 7 days, after everyone was on board, there was just silence. One final week before the old world was washed away for good.
Then, the floodgates of heaven just opened up. For 40 days and 40 nights, the rain was relentless, and the fountains of the great deep burst forth.
And for a whopping 150 days, the water covered everything. The world was submerged. It's against this dramatic backdrop that we find our first key discovery.
All right, our first big insight from this story is that God's plan for salvation, well, it's often bigger than just one person. It's about their whole family.
Notice God's specific command here. It's not just, Noah, you're saved. It's, get on the ark, you and your whole family. Right from the start, salvation is presented as this family-centered community event. So, why was Noah saved? The text makes this super important distinction. His righteousness wasn't some salary he earned for his good behavior. It was a gift, a result of the grace he found in God's eyes. He didn't earn his spot on the ark, he received it by faith. And you know what? That changes everything.
And this isn't just a one-off thing. It's a pattern we see all through the scriptures. The blood of the Passover lamb protected the whole house. Rahab's faith saved her entire family. In the New Testament, the households of Cornelius and the Philippian jailer were saved together. There's this clear, consistent focus on the family unit.
And check out the leadership here. The text says Noah went in first, leading the way. He didn't just tell his family, you guys go on ahead, I'll catch up. He took the lead. For parents, that's such a powerful call to action. Be the example, build an ark of faith, and lead your family into it.
Our second discovery takes us inside the ark itself, where we find something truly miraculous, an impossible peace that points to a future hope. Can you just picture the scene? Predators and prey, natural enemies, all crammed together in a confined space. The wolf isn't going after the lamb. The lion isn't devouring the ox. The source even playfully suggests the dog, the cat, and the mouse were all coexisting. I mean, this is a peace that just defies the laws of nature. Now, this impossible peace isn't just some random detail. It's a direct echo of that famous prophecy from Isaiah about the coming messianic age, a time when creation itself will be reconciled and a little child will lead them. The ark was a floating preview of this future harmony.
So the source draws this really powerful conclusion. Just like there was a supernatural peace inside the ark, true peace in our world, between warring nations, in broken families, in the human heart, can only come from one source. Yeshua, the Prince of Peace, is the only one who can heal that deep-seated division and hostility and bring about real, lasting reconciliation. The ark is a symbol of that safe haven.
This brings us to our third and final discovery, and it centers on one of the most powerful actions in the entire story, God himself shutting the door of the ark. This single act has 2 wildly different meanings, depending on which side of the door you're on. For everyone outside the ark, the sound of that door closing was a sound of finality. It was the moment the time for grace ended and the time for judgment began. There was no more getting in. But for Noah and his family, that exact same sound meant something completely different. For them, it was the sound of perfect security. God was sealing them in, protecting them from the storm and the judgment raging outside. The closed door wasn't a prison. It was a promise of safety.
And this idea of being securely sealed, it gets echoed big time in the New Testament. This promise from the Gospel of John speaks of an unbreakable security. Once you're in the Father's hand, nothing and no one can snatch you away. Just like those in the ark, those who are in Christ are sealed safe from the final judgment.
So, what does this ancient story mean for us today?
Well, the source frames this whole thing not as a history lesson, but as a living, breathing invitation for right now.
Ultimately, the story points to a bigger reality. The door of the ark? It's a symbol. Jesus himself makes it explicit when he says, "I am the door." He is the way to safety, the way to be saved from the coming judgment.
And this is the most crucial takeaway. Unlike in Noah's day, when that door eventually closed, the source reminds us that today, the door to the Ark of Salvation is wide open. The invitation to come in, to find safety and new life, is available right now.
So we're left with this final thought to chew on. Noah was called to build a physical ark to save his family. The question for us is, what ark of faith and obedience are you being called to build today, for yourself and for the people you love?
So imagine this for a second. What if you knew for a fact that judgment was coming, and you had exactly 7 days to prepare?
That urgency, that countdown is really at the heart of our deep dive today.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are jumping into one of the most foundational stories in human history, Noah's Ark, and specifically Genesis chapter 7.
And our goal for you, the learner, is to go beyond just the surface story. We want to really unpack the symbolism and the wisdom that sources have drawn from this text for centuries.
Yeah, this isn't just about an ancient flood. We're looking at how interpreters saw this story as a blueprint for understanding faith, salvation, and how to live your life.
Exactly. Our mission is to walk through the story itself, look at some of the really specific details, and then focus on 3 big discoveries the source material points out.
Which are what exactly?
First, the real nature of Noah's justice. Second, the incredible prophetic peace inside the ark. And finally, the meaning behind that closed door.
Okay, let's start at the beginning then, because the sources say Noah's selection wasn't random. There was this whole principle at play, this idea of the blessed man.
That's right. It's the foundation for everything that follows. The idea is that true prosperity, true success, comes from sticking to divine guidance.
And the description is so vivid, isn't it? This person doesn't follow bad advice. They don't hang out with cynics. Instead, they meditate on the law.
Day and night. Their whole life is oriented around it.
And the result isn't just, feeling good. The text says it's tangible. It's like a tree planted by water, always bearing fruit. Its leaf never withers. And the promise is,
everything he does shall prosper. And this is the kind of person God found in Noah. So when we get to Genesis 7, the ark is ready, and God gives the command.
Enter the boat, him and his whole family.
And God gives the reason very clearly. He says, I can see that among all the people on earth, only you are just. He'd found that one person.
Now, before the rain starts, there are these logistical details about the animals that I think most people miss. It wasn't just 2x2 for everything.
No, not at all. And the specifics are fascinating. They reveal a lot about what was important for, life after the flood.
So what were the instructions?
He was to take 7 pairs, male and female, of every animal that was approved for eating and for sacrifice. The clean animal.
Okay, 7 pairs of those, but for all the other animals.
Just 1 pair.
Yeah.
A male and a female. And the interpreters say this is brilliant. It ensures all species survive, but it also provides a surplus of the animals needed for worship and for food right after they land.
So they could make a sacrifice without wiping out a species.
Exactly. It's preservation with a purpose.
So Noah does all this. The countdown begins 7 days. And Noah, who is 600 years old at this point, he boards the ark with his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives.
And man, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, it happens. And it wasn't just rain. The sources describe this dual cataclysm.
Right. It's water from above and below. The subterranean waters erupted and rain poured from the heavens.
For 40 days and 40 nights. And the result was total. Every living thing on dry land, birds, animals, people, everything that breathed was wiped out.
But the ark itself, it just rose with the water. It was this little bubble of life in a world that was completely underwater.
A single pocket of survival. Only Noah and those inside with him made it through.
And that stark division, that separation between inside and outside, that's a perfect lead-in to our first big discovery, isn't it?
It is. Let's talk about the nature of Noah's justice.
Okay, so the text says Noah was just, but then it also says he found favor or grace in God's eyes. That almost sounds like a contradiction. Was he perfect, or did he get a pass?
And that's the exact tension the sources focus on.
They
stress that he found God's grace first. It wasn't that he was so perfect he earned salvation.
So it's not the other way around.
No. The argument is he was saved because he had the faith to actually listen, to build the boat, to believe God in the first place.
That's a huge distinction. It's a gift, not a salary.
Precisely. And the sources connect this idea to later text to really drive it home. They bring up Paul's letter to the Romans, which uses that exact analogy. A salary is what you're owed for work, but righteousness, being considered just, is a gift you get through faith.
I remember the quote they used from David, "Oh, what joy for those whose disobedience is forgiven." It's about what's erased from your account, not what you've earned.
Exactly. Noah's status was a gift he accepted through his faith and his actions. And that gift wasn't just for him.
Right, the command was enter the ark with all your family.
And this is so important. The sources suggest that the grace given to Noah acted as a sort of spiritual umbrella for his whole family.
That must give a lot of hope to parents, the idea that their faith can pave the way for their family's salvation.
It's a central lesson. Parents have a responsibility to prepare that ark of salvation, and it starts with initiative.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. The sources point out that Noah was told to start building the ark decades, maybe, before his first son was even born.
Wow. So he was building this vessel of faith before his kids were even around to see it.
He had to be proactive, and he had to lead by example. Noah got on the boat first. He didn't just lecture his kids from the shore. And today, when a kid can just Google or ask an AI to challenge anything you say, your own conduct, your visible faith is the strongest argument you have.
And this idea of family salvation, it's a recurring theme, isn't it?
Oh, it's everywhere. The sources list so many examples. The Passover lamb's blood protecting the whole house, Rahab saving her family at Jericho, the Holy Spirit falling on the Roman centurion Cornelio and his house.
And Paul telling the jailer, you and your house will be saved.
It's a clear pattern. God seems to work through that family unit.
Okay, that is huge. But let's shift to what was happening inside the ark, because that brings us to the second discovery, which is almost unbelievable, this idea of prophetic peace.
It really is the most counterintuitive part of the whole story. I mean, you have a confined space filled with natural predators and their prey.
You've got the lion, the wolf, the lamb, the leopard, the cat and the mouse, all cooped up together. How on earth did that work?
The sources call it a holy peace. It was this temporary, miraculous suspension of the natural order. The food chain was just paused.
And because that's so unnatural, the interpreters see it as more than just a miracle.
They see it as a prophetic anticipation. It was a sneak peek, a trailer, for a future global peace. A peace that would be brought about by Yeshua, the term our sources use for Jesus, the Prince of Peace.
Okay, that clicks. This connects directly to the prophecy in Isaiah chapter 11.
Precisely. Isaiah talks about a future king from the line of David. And in his kingdom, the wolf will live with the lamb. The lion will eat straw like an ox.
And a baby will play safely over a viper's den. I mean, that's an image of total fundamental peace. It's not just a truce, it's a change in nature itself.
A complete transformation. And so the implication, according to the sources, is profound.
What's the takeaway for us right now?
That only Yeshua, this promised king, can bring that level of reconciliation. Whether you're talking about conflicts in the Middle East, or fights within your own family, or just the hatred in the human heart. True peace is only found inside his ark of salvation.
Which brings us to the final and maybe the most sobering discovery, the finality of the door.
Yes. After everyone is inside, the text says something very specific. It says that God himself shut the door.
Not Noah. It wasn't Noah pulling a latch. This was a divine action.
A very decisive, solemn action. And it has this powerful dual meaning.
Okay, what's the first meaning?
For those outside, for the lost, it's a message of terrible finality. Once judgment came, the door was sealed. The chance was gone. It's an urgent call to get inside when you still can.
But for those inside?
For them, it's a message of absolute assurance. Once God closes that door, you are completely safe, sealed off from the judgment raging outside.
That certainty is everything.
It is. And the interpreters back this up with other texts, like from John 10. My sheep listen to my voice. I give them eternal life, and they shall never perish. No one can snatch them out of my hand. Once you're in, you're secure.
Now, speaking of what survived, the sources point out something interesting about the fish.
Right. The flood destroyed life on dry land. The fish, obviously, were fine. And they're given this really powerful symbolic meaning.
They represent what?
They're seen as symbolic of believers who are found in the Sea of Nations, people who will be saved from judgment even as the world around them is in chaos.
Which brings us to that final connection the sources make with Yeshua as the ultimate fisherman.
Exactly. You have that incredible story in Luke 5, the miraculous catch of fish.
Yeah.
And what does Jesus say to Peter afterwards? From now on, You will fish for people.
So the ark, the door, the flood, it's all a physical story pointing to a spiritual reality.
Yes, the sources are clear. Yeshua is the door of salvation. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can go to the Father except through me. That closed door of the ark is a powerful symbol of that one final path.
Wow. So to recap, we've seen that Noah's salvation wasn't earned. It was a gift received by faith. The ark itself was this hidden prophecy of a future radical peace.
Yeah.
And the closed door means both final judgment and absolute security.
And all of that culminates in this one powerful prayer, this aspiration found in the source material. It's a desire to be the last person in your family line to live in a history of malice and violence, and to be the first in a new history of faith, hope, and love.
That's a powerful thought.
And it leaves you, the learner, with a really important question to think about. If proactive faith is the foundation for your family's salvation, what specific steps, what initiative do you need to take today to start building that ark and establish that new spiritual history for your own household?
Yeah. A question that definitely requires action. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep digging into these ancient texts. There's so much there. We'll see you next time.